Hello, in today's video I'm going to discuss the friction between the SS and the army and the consequences that this had for the Nazi German war effort. Nazi Germany was something called a polycratic state. Now, those who are in favour of dictatorships argue that, well, there's one person in charge and therefore everything runs smoothly because there's not competing agencies trying to put their own word in. Well, nothing could be further from the truth because, and Nazi Germany is probably the most extreme example of this, is that Hitler, one argument could say that because he didn't want any single organization to challenge him, so therefore he created lots of agencies, often with overlapping authority, and who would then fight amongst themselves. Another argument, and this is something I get the impression from reading Albert Speer, is that Hitler didn't know what he was doing anyway, and so he wanted to reward people, so he gave them jobs to do and positions which didn't really mean anything. And actually you do see this as well in Russia today to a certain extent, though it's not exaggerated as much as it was in Nazi Germany. As far as the military is concerned, therefore you've got the Wehrmacht and the SS engaging in fierce institutional rivalry, jurisdictional disputes, and competition for resources. Although, of course, both were united to a certain degree in service to the regime's criminal objective. Now, initially, the Wehrmacht viewed the SS with a mixture of aristocratic disdain and professional suspicion. The regular army was shaped in Prussian military tradition, emphasizing professional autonomy and the traditional laws of land warfare. In contrast, the SS was the ideological spearhead of the Nazi Party. It was led by Himmler, and he envisioned the SS as a new order of racial warriors. The ideological differences therefore fueled friction, as many career officers were concerned with military efficiency and, to a certain extent, international law, at least in principle, whereas the SS doctrine explicitly rejected traditional laws of warfare as being outdated and bourgeois. Tensions flared for the first time during the invasion of Poland. Wehrmacht commanders were disgusted at the SS units' random use of violence against civilians. And these protests obviously were rarely humanitarian, but they were pragmatic. But it needs to be pointed out that the arguments used were the arguments the SS themselves might have understood. So officers feared these executions, or murders I should say, undermining military discipline and as something that would fuel partisan resistance. And on the level of military operations, notable examples of this friction continued in the Balkans as well, so Yugoslavia and the Greek campaign, and where competing anti-partisan operations by army and SS units, they led to confusion, inefficiency, and a struggle for command dominance. However, it's above all in the invasion of the Soviet Union, as from June 1941, where this rivalry sort of gets even bigger. As the Wehrmacht advanced, it established military administration areas in rear areas. However, the SS, operating through the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA, and in consequence, or directly under it, the Einsatzgruppen, these mobile killing units of which I've done so many videos about. So they held a parallel mandate for security. These tasks were actually nothing to do with security whatsoever. It was a systematic campaign of mass murder targeting anyone they didn't like, and above all Jews, people they perceived to be communists, and anybody else they perceived was against them. Wehrmacht field commanders frequently chafed at this SS and their independent authority. The Einsatzgruppen often acted unilaterally. They didn't ask the military, or even tell the military command what was going on. And so, whereas many army group commanders provided logistical support, intelligence sharing, and food, all the things necessary for these killings, they resented the chaos that the SS created. They argued that mass shootings were counterproductive. They alienated local populations whose cooperation was needed for labor and intelligence. And in some instances, field commanders filed formal protests, not out of moral objection, but because they feared SS atrocities would destabilize their zones of control and complicate military logistics, which is precisely what happened. Albert Speer, I'll refer to once more, he referred to the fact he was able to travel around the Ukraine without an escort, but within a few months this wasn't possible, and this was due to the behavior of these what I would term political criminals, SS and the likes. So they turned what was effectively a peaceful area into areas of where the partisans actually controlled completely. And you look at Belarus, there's only really the roads, the communications areas, and even them only, and the railway lines and the cities, which were controlled by the German forces. In the countryside, there was absolutely no law whatsoever. The expansion of the Waffen-SS into a fully fledged army of over 900,000 men by January of 1945 created a permanent state of competition for manpower. As the Waffen-SS grew, it drew recruits from the same demographic pool as the Wehrmacht, and this actively promoted itself as a vanguard of a new Nazi military order. This recruitment drive directly undermined the Wehrmacht's ability to maintain its own strength, especially after the catastrophic losses on the Eastern Front as from the beginning of 1943. The mutual disdain between the two corps was profound. The Wehrmacht's traditional officer corps dismissed Waffen-SS officers as politically indoctrinated amateurs who lacked professional military training and discipline. Conversely, the SS leadership saw the Wehrmacht as an outdated conservative institution insufficiently committed to the racial goals of National Socialism, or shall we say, the conspiracy theories, because that's what they were. This rivalry manifested in fierce disputes over conscription quotas, draft exemption, and the allocation of replacement troops, with each side accusing the other of being ideologically soft or professionally incompetent. This, of course, led to competition for material resources and technical parity, and this competition was intense. Both institutions vied for access to weapons, ammunition, vehicles, and fuel, and the Waffen-SS got preferential treatment from key figures in the Nazi hierarchy, and this, in this case, I need to point this out, from Albert Speer's own armaments ministry, which allocated newer tanks and better small arms to SS divisions. During the 1943-4 period, the allocation of Tiger and Panther tanks heavily favoured the Waffen-SS, and the most extreme example that I can think of is the Battle of Kursk in July 1943. So you have the disaster of Stalingrad, which leads to Manstein's brilliant counter-attack in the late winter, early spring of 1943 to stalemate position, and then you come to the Battle of Kursk. And July 1943, the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, Leibstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf, they were the probably the best and certainly most heavily equipped units in the military, often possessing a much larger number of the new Panther D and Tiger I heavy tanks than the Army's most senior Panzer divisions, who'd had all these years of training and then experience. Statistical records show that while the Wehrmacht bore the brunt of the defensive fighting as from the late summer of 1943, across multiple fronts, it was the SS who were usually pulled out of the line first to be fully refitted with the latest now Panther A and Panther G tanks, much ahead of the regular army units. So by 1944, a significantly higher percentage of Waffen-SS tank battalions were fitted with Tiger I, now Tiger II, the King Tiger, compared to their Wehrmacht counterparts. By late 1944, the SS possessed 7 fully equipped Panzer divisions, which received a disproportionate share of the monthly tank production, often and normally at the expense of the depleted army units, such as, for example, Panzer-Lehr or the 2nd Panzer Division. This perceived favoritism bred deep resentment within the Wehrmacht, whose commanders argued that combat effectiveness, not political loyalty, should determine resource distribution. So, what effect did this have on the attempted coup of the 20th of July 1944? So this was the conservative Wehrmacht officers led by Klaus von Stauffenberg, who wanted to overthrow the regime. And so it was the regime which reacted with brutal, retaliation against those involved in this. In the aftermath, the SS used the event as a pretext to systematically dismantle the remaining professional autonomy of the Wehrmacht. And Himmler was appointed commander of the replacement army, placing SS oversight directly within the military's own administrative structure. Military salutes were replaced with the Nazi salute, and National Socialist guidance officers were embedded throughout the ranks to monitor loyalty. So effectively they were the same as the Soviets' political commissars. For the SS, the plot was the ultimate validation of their narrative that the old aristocratic officer corps was inherently disloyal, and that only the ideologically pure SS could be trusted to lead the defense of the Reich in its final desperate months. So this rivalry extended into the occupied territories, where both organizations established parallel administrative and economic structures. The SS controlled vast networks of concentration camps and industrial enterprises, notably through the SS-owned Deutsche Wirtschaftsbetriebe, which competed with Wehrmacht-run requisition systems for food, raw materials and labour. In Eastern Europe, Wehrmacht economic officers frequently clashed with SS leaders over the exploitation of local resources, with each side accusing the other of hoarding supplies or disrupting production. The SS's brutal methods of extraction, often involving mass deportations, further destabilized areas under nominal Wehrmacht control, complicating military logistics and provoking partisan resistance that the army, not the SS, then had to suppress. Despite this fierce competition, it is really important to emphasize that collaboration remained the dominant mode of interaction when it came to implementing the Nazis' core policies, and above all racial policies. Both institutions cooperated extensively in the Holocaust, anti-partisan warfare, and the suppression of the civilian population. The existence of eternal conflict within the Nazi state apparatus didn't negate the shared complicity of both organizations. Resource rivalry and jurisdictional friction did not equate to moral opposition. Rather, it reflected competing visions of how best to serve the regime's genocidal and imperialist aims. Post-war trials, including those analysed by Willard B. Coles in 1948, recognised that such institutional dynamics did not absolve either organisation of criminal responsibility. The competition was a struggle for primacy within a criminal system, not, as is or has been suggested, or was suggested certainly until the late 1980s, a contest between legality and lawlessness. So I have already touched on these themes in previous videos, but and I will continue to do so. If we look at the 20th of July, for example, we have people involved who I would term to be utterly clean, to those who were really dirty, such as Helsdorf, Niebuhr, criminals who had actually served the regime. And also, of course, it is very difficult to say, where do you draw the line? I mean, what would you do if you found yourself in this situation, which isn't always all that easy, and we sometimes may be demanding heroism from others that we do not possess ourselves. What was right, what was wrong, and what could have been done to prevent things happening. Now, I've spoken quite a lot on Erich von Manstein. I have said how much I admire him as a military person, but I think he was severely lacking in morality. He may have made fun of Hitler in his at home. I mean, he taught his dog to do the Nazi salute on the command Heil Hitler. And clearly this was meant to be an insult towards the leadership. But when people complained to him about the massacre in Simferopol in Crimea, he told the person to not get involved, as it was nothing to do with him. Anyway, good. Thanks so much for listening. So I upload every day now. I upload at 20 hours most days. It's a short video, but another it's only up to 3 minutes. But on Tuesdays and Fridays, and often now on other days as well, I'm doing longer videos in which I discuss things of this nature. For example, there's also a channel membership which costs how much it cost? I can't remember now. £4 and $5, or was it £5 and $6 or €6? Can't remember, something like that. And that'll give you access now to more than 800 members only videos, should you be interested. But for the moment, from me, now I'm in the UK. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.